It was October, the kind of cold that threads itself into your bones and makes the world feel like an old movie granny at the edges, too quiet between frames. We were a group of us stationed out west, fresh from field rotations, and the sort of restless boredom that makes legends feel like homework. One of the crew, Jonah, grew up here and knew every rumor stitched to the map. Hollow Ridge Road, a 2-lane ribbon that wound through pines and past a slow river, the sort of road that curves like a question. Jonah rattled off the usual catalog of whispers, joggers tapping at windows, handprints that bled into signposts, hitchhikers that melted into mist. But the one that stuck with us was simple and loud. The phantom Camaro. A car, a crash, a driver too fast for the turns, a machine that came back to drive people into places they didn't want to go. We treated the story like a dare. With October light gone early and a week of cold settling over Colorado, 5 of us climbed into one car and drove out after midnight. When you're on base, the hours bend. Suddenly, a 1 a.m. run feels like the right time for folly. The road was black enough to swallow lamplight, the trees leaning in close as if to eavesdrop. We pulled up where Jonah said there'd be a roadside cross, the sort of thin memorial someone sticks where the pavement got cruel. A couple of the guys hopped out to pee into the weeds. The rest of us lingered by the cross, breath fogging like little clouds of confession. The air was so thick you could hear it. The silence had a texture, like velvet dampened with ice. We'd only been standing there a minute, maybe less, when sound found us. At first, it was the kind of distant roar you expect in movies, the high, hungry note of an engine letting out a challenge. Then the car came around the bend, like a thing conjured. Low black silhouette. An old Camaro's line swallowed the moonlight, and the taillights equals 2 small red moons that cut through the dark. We laughed, half a joke leaning into the legend. Jonah muttered, "That's him," and the words slipped between us like a dare. When it passed, the tires whispered over asphalt, and then nothing sudden, clean. We turned to go, and the world narrowed to the crunch of boots and the hollow of our own hearts. That's when the Camaro reappeared, out of the dark like it had been summoned by breath. It was right there, now behind our car, too close for comfort. Up close, the paint lost detail. The passenger side headlight was gone, the chrome eaten by age. The driver's silhouette sat low and deliberate, no light from inside. I remember Jonah's face in the rear view that moment, the easy grin gone, replaced by a look that had met ghosts before and decided not to smile. We told the driver, our driver Mark, to keep it calm. "Do the speed limit," one of us said. The tale said the Camaro chased speeders, and the whole group agreed that flashing bravado would be stupid. So we drove like Sunday churchgoers, careful, measured, the car's heater fogging the windows into soft glass. The Camaro tailgated, a dark punctuation on every mirror. There was something obscene about it killing its lights. In a place this dark, turning off your headlights is not stealth. It's a dare to vanish or to make others do the same. The road pulled us through hairpins that felt like teeth, and the Camaro breathed close, close enough that I could feel its absence of noise like a pressure behind the seats. When we reached the stretch that marks the end of Hollow Ridge, a place where the road widens and the trees open to low fields, The Camaro did something that made all of our spines slide cold. It rolled forward until it was level with our bumper and then stopped. The driver's silhouette leaned forward in a motion that looked almost human, like someone taking off a mask, and the car spun a smooth arc and was gone, folding back into the dark in the opposite direction. For a long minute we sat with our breath in our mouths, heart hammers echoing in the chest like hollow bells. On the drive back, the discussion was small and brittle. Some of us argued it was a prank. Someone with a taste for old muscle cars could have known the legend and timed the pass. Others said it was coincidence, a late traveler, a local with too much time. Me? I'm the sort of person who wants patterns to make sense. I felt the road bend under me like an animal. The silence afterward was the worst sound. Not emptiness, but a thing that sits and measures you, patient and unimpressed. I still think about how the Camaro came from nowhere, no headlight sound until it was upon us, no glow on the tree line, like a thing that wasn't meant to be in the world anymore but insisted on being seen. Whether phantom or man-made trick, it felt as if the road itself wanted to be remembered. And there's an exact sliver of terror in believing the improbable is possible, the gap between laughter and the sudden knowing that you are not alone. We tried to laugh it off on the ride back, but the sound came out thin. Cold fingers of October wind pressed the car's heat into fog on the windows. Every silhouette of tree looked like a thing listening. Jonah sat quiet in the back, thumb running the edge of the roadside cross in his pocket like a talisman. We circled the story around ourselves again. Prank? Coincidence? Someone with an affinity for muscle cars. But none of us could invent the way the Camaro had killed its lights, like it wanted to melt into the dark and turn us into a different kind of story. That week, the image of that empty headlight lodged in the back of my eyes. I started replaying the moment in my head with the meticulous cruelty of someone rearranging details until they fit a pattern. How it had appeared after we stepped out of the car, how silent its approach had been, how it had matched every line in Jonah's description. Skeptics insisted that someone could have timed it, that a guy with an old Camaro and a grudge could have practiced. But practice leaves habits. The tiny sounds of tires on gravel, a coolant whistle, a radio letting a song leak. What we'd seen had none of those human signatures. It moved like a memory wearing chrome. A few of the guys wanted to go back the next weekend, part dare, part stubbornness. This time we went with more people and more lights, thinking numbers and bright phones would be a kind of armor. We parked farther off the road, away from the cross, because nobody wanted to be that cliché in front of a memorial. The air smelled of wet leaves, gasoline, and something older, like old rubber left too long in sun. When we walked, the road under our boots had a grave, hollow sound, as if the asphalt itself had learned to hold breath. We waited longer than the first night. Time blunted into something elastic. Our jokes dried up. Then, like someone exhaling behind a door, the Camaro came. It rolled around the bend without a roar. The night swallowed the approach until the red taillights were already there, floating like two dead stars. It followed at the same cautious, impossibly close distance as before. Nobody said speed up at first. None of us wanted to feed any legend with a stunt. But Tommy, the loudest of us and the one who believed in nothing that cost him sleep, muttered, "Come on, let's give it a show." he drove. We all knew it was a bad idea the second the car moved. The road tightened into a series of teeth-blind crests, narrow shoulders, and the Camaro clung to the tail of our brakes like a shadow intent on copying every panic. At first it sounded normal, a throaty inhale of an engine, a rattling muffler. Then the lights went out. Not the kind of dim that happens while blinking through a potholed road, but absolute. The Camaro disappeared from sight except for the faint red ghosts of its taillights, and yet we could feel its presence like a push against our bumper. My hands were a lead band on the wheel. Each bend felt like a test of whether gravity would decide to be honest. Tommy swore and floored it, the car leaping forward into the night. The Camaro accelerated too effortless, as if the road had learned to push under its tires. The trees blurred into ribs on either side, and the radio cut to static. The only sound left was the ragged bark of our own car, and something behind us that had no right to be so close without making noise. I remember thinking, with the clinical clarity of dread, that if we lost control on that stretch, we'd be the ones to make a new cross. The Camaro flirted with our bumper, then, impossibly, nudged to the left as if to say, "Now you see me." Its taillights winked out like candle flames snuffed. Darkness swallowed it. For a second, I felt the absence like a physical shove, an emptiness where pressure should have been. We didn't stop until the road opened to the main highway and lights bled back in from a distant intersection. We pulled over in a lit lot with hands throttling air. We sat in the car panting like men who'd just been held underwater. Then, in the rear view, a shadow unrolled across the road. One last outline, the Camaro sliding away with the smooth, almost ritual patience. It turned a corner and was gone. No headlights to mark its retreat, no exhaust to cloud the night. We watched until the trees stole it whole. That night shattered something soft in our group. The bravado drained out of us. Even the jokers were quiet. We called friends, posted a video clip Jonah had grabbed on his phone shaky at the moment the lights went out, and watched the feed eat it like it was a bad file. Nobody could explain the blackness. The clip was grainy. Taillights, a white streak of paint, then a smear of night. Some comments called it fake. Others, stranger, said they'd felt like something watched them on Hollow Ridge, even in daylight. After that, we split into conversations that felt like an attempt to repair the world with evidence. We scoured local archives for wreck reports, checked police blotters, and found a faded article about a crash decades back. An old man too fast for the curves, a Camaro twisted off a guardrail. The name matched the one Jonah's friend had muttered in the car that night. It matched enough to make our stomachs drop. The article used the passive voice, was lost, was recovered, but it mentioned the family putting up a cross. People will believe different things. The skeptic sees coincidence, the believer sees pattern. I keep seeing the Camaro's headlights die and thinking about what it would mean if the road kept a driver like that, practicing for an audience. We stopped going at night after that. The legend had gotten bigger in our heads. We'd fed it with our fear, and it grew. But sometimes, when the highway is empty and the radio plays an old muscle track, I drive slow in the passing lanes and watch the tree line like it's a mouth. The memory doesn't leave. It sits behind the ribs like a second pulse, steady, patient, waiting to be noticed again. The weeks after that second drive stretched thin. We pretended to carry on like the road hadn't rearranged something inside us, but the memory of the Camaro lived in small, stupid places. The hum of a neighbor's engine, the way a passing truck's taillights bled red across a dark window. Jonah stopped joking. Tommy sold his old coupe and washed his hands of anything with more than 4 cylinders. I found myself cataloging explanations in order to sleep prank, coincidence, urban legend amplified by adrenaline. Yet every catalog page ended with a blank line. Curiosity didn't die. It migrated into obsession. We dug through county records, scoured microfiche at the library, and tracked down the faded police blotter that referenced a wreck on Hollow Ridge in 1973. The car was a '69 Camaro, and the driver, young, fast, unnamed in the short paragraph, had been pronounced dead at the scene. A neighbor had stuck a cross where the guardrail chewed concrete into teeth. The article was small and sterile, the kind of obit that shrinks sorrow into a line. It didn't explain why the car kept coming back to the road, or why its lights would die like a candle snuffed. But finding that piece of paper made our spines feel colder in daylight. Proof can be comfort or kindling. In our case, it offered a rhythm to our fear. A month later, though the rational part of me wanted to walk away, I found myself driving back out alone. Nobody else wanted to go, not because they were scared, but because they'd already seen what they needed to see. I told myself this was investigation, not bravado. I parked farther off the shoulder, out of the place Jonah had pointed the first night, and left the engine running so I could leave in a hurry if I had to. My breath made small fog flowers on the glass. The road smelled of wet leaves and cold oil. I waited until a wash of moonless black made the trees into barbed silhouettes. At first the night did nothing but make my chest a metronome for quiet. Crickets stitched a thin net across the dark, and the occasional metallic scratch of a distant farm gate punctured the sound. Time folded. I checked my phone. No new messages or any trick. I had told myself to be sensible. The myth had been a dare once. Now it felt like a test. After an hour, when exhaustion had started dissolving the sharp edges of my hope, the Camaro came. Not with a roar like in movies, but like a slide of black material across the road. It appeared on the bend, tail lights low and dull, just as the legend had promised. I did not panic. Instead, I strapped both palms to the wheel and reminded myself of the rules we'd made the first time. Do not speed. Do not swerve. Do not try to outmaneuver whatever is behind you. The car fell into our old pattern. It followed at a small, obscene distance, then killed its headlights so that its taillights hung like red eyes in a shallow dusk. In the mirror, it was a smear of shadow that wanted to be a threat. I kept my foot steady. My stomach rolled in a slow, sick wince each time the road carved a new turn. When I reached the final stretch, where the trees opened, the Camaro slowed again. This time, instead of cruising beside me and disappearing, it eased forward until its bumper lined with mine. The silence between us felt dense enough to press into the leather. I thought I saw as shapeless a person, then a posture leaning from that low driver's seat, a suggestion of a face turned toward me. It moved in a gesture that could have been a nod or an accusation. My heart knocked so loud I feared it would echo into the field and wake anything that listened. Then the headlights blinked back on all at once, and the Camaro was simply a car again, rust under the paint, a cloud of exhaust. It idled a foot away, and then, with a human impatience that made my skin crawl, it simply turned and drove off. I followed it with my eyes until it swallowed itself in the trees. No apparitions reached from the passenger seat. No spectral driver raised fingers in farewell. Just a car that knew the road and used that knowledge to move with uncanny deliberation. After that night, I stopped looking for ghosts and started looking at narratives. What a road carries in its history. What towns keep in the margins. People who grew up on Hollow Ridge told half-truths and then refused the rest. Locals left flowers and a beer at the roadside cross and then moved on. The myth did work for some. It wrapped men in a story that made the past tactile, made grief visible. For others, it was a sequence of scares that diluted into Halloween lore. For me, the Camaro became an emblem, not proof of the afterlife, not a hoax, just an event lodged so precisely into the edges of a place that it refused to leave. I don't know if the Camaro was a phantom or a man who loved the shape of the car too much and the road even more. Perhaps it was an old grief replaying itself the way a record skips at the same crackle. The thing I'm left with isn't a tidy answer, but a lasting image. The dark of the trees pressing close, the road a throat of asphalt, and two small red lights pulsing like a heart that refuses to stop. That picture sits in my memory like a road sign you can't read. It warns and it invites, and it keeps you awake long after the ignition turns silent.